Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES horizon and watched the stars move past them in the viewing screen. His ship had been out here for 3 months now, mapping the edges of human space and looking for new worlds to explore. The work was routine but important, and Jake enjoyed the quiet of deep space. Dr. Lisa Wang looked up from her science station with a puzzled expression on her face. She had been working on updating the galactic navigation charts for the past week, comparing human star maps with data from their alien trading partners. Something was bothering her, and Jake could see it in the way she kept frowning at her displays. "Captain, I need to show you something," Lisa said as she walked over to him. "I've been looking at the navigation data from our alien contacts, and there's a pattern that doesn't make sense." Jake followed her to the main display screen where she pulled up a 3-dimensional map of known space. The human territories showed up in blue, while their alien neighbors appeared in different colors. The Zephyrians were marked in green, the Krell hegemony in red, and the peaceful Elvari in soft purple. "Look at this," Lisa said as she pointed to the edges of the map. "Every single alien civilization's star charts end right here, at the borders of human space. Not gradually, not with unexplored regions marked for future survey. They just stop." Jake studied the display more carefully. Lisa was right. Where human maps showed vast regions of unexplored space beyond their current borders, the alien maps showed nothing at all. It was as if space itself ended at the edge of human territory. "Maybe they just haven't explored that far yet," Jake suggested, but even as he said it, he knew it sounded wrong. The Zephyrians had been spacefaring for thousands of years before humans even invented the wheel. "That's what I thought too," Lisa replied. "But look at this data from the Krell. They're aggressive expansionists who have been conquering and exploring for over 2,000 years. Yet their maps show the same thing, nothing beyond human space." Commander Ryan Burke, the ship's tactical officer, walked over to join the conversation. He had been listening from his station and looked concerned. "Are you saying that every alien species we know treats our space as the edge of the galaxy?" "That's exactly what I'm saying," Lisa answered. "And it gets stranger. I've been going through our first contact reports and trade negotiations. Every time we've shown aliens our star charts that extend beyond our current borders, they react with confusion or fear." Jake remembered something from their last supply run to the Centauri trading post. They had met with a Zephyrian merchant captain who seemed nervous when discussing human exploration plans. At the time, Jake had thought it was just typical alien caution about human expansion. "We're scheduled to rendezvous with the Zephyrian trade vessel Flowing Current tomorrow," Jake said. "Let's ask them directly about their navigation charts." The next day, Captain Morrison and Dr. Wang transported aboard the Flowing Current to meet with its captain, a Zephyrian named Swimming Against Tide. The Zephyrians were aquatic beings who lived in water-filled chambers aboard their ships. They communicated through a combination of sonic pulses and color changes in their skin, which their translation computers converted to human speech. "We greet you with the warmth of deep currents," Swimming Against Tide said through the translator. The alien's skin showed swirling patterns of blue and green that indicated friendship and respect. "Thank you for meeting with us," Jake replied. "We have some questions about navigation and star charts, if you don't mind." Lisa activated a portable display and showed the Zephyrian captain their combined star maps. She pointed to the regions beyond human space that showed up on human charts, but not on alien ones. "Can you tell us why your navigation charts don't show these regions?" she asked. Swimming Against Tide's skin colors shifted to darker shades that the computer translated as confusion and unease. The alien moved closer to the display, studying it carefully. His sonic pulses became more rapid, indicating agitation. "This cannot be accurate," the captain said. "There is nothing beyond the warm space of thinking beings. The void that calls to no one lies there. Wise swimmers know where the current ends." Lisa looked at Jake with raised eyebrows. The Zephyrians' response was even stranger than they had expected. "What do you mean by void that calls to no one?" she asked. The alien's skin turned almost black, and his sonic pulses became sharp and distressed. "The place where thoughts go to die, where the current of mind stops flowing. No being ventures there. It is known, but our ships travel through those regions regularly," Jake said. "We've established colonies and research stations throughout that area." Swimming against tide's entire body began to shimmer with colors that the computer struggled to translate. The emotions seemed to be a mixture of terror, disbelief, and something that might have been reverence. "This is not possible," the alien captain said. "No consciousness can survive in the void silence. You speak of impossibilities." The meeting ended abruptly when Swimming Against Tide declared that he needed to return to his ship immediately. The Zephyrian vessel departed without completing their planned trade exchange, leaving the human crew with more questions than answers. Back aboard the Horizon, Lisa began pulling data from every first contact report and diplomatic exchange in the ship's database. She worked through the night, and by morning she had found the same pattern in dozens of encounters spanning over a century of human space exploration. "Jake, I think we've stumbled onto something big," she said as she showed him her findings. "Every alien species we've ever met describes the same thing. They all believe that space beyond human territory is some kind of dead zone where consciousness cannot exist." Jake stared at the data on her screen and felt a chill run down his spine. If Lisa was right, then humanity had been unknowingly expanding into regions that every other known species considered uninhabitable. The question was why humans seemed to be immune to whatever effect kept other species away from those areas. "Get me a direct communication link to Earth Command," Jake ordered. "I think we need to report this to people with higher security clearances than ours." Admiral Susan Kelly read the report from the UES Horizon 3 times before she fully understood what Captain Morrison was suggesting. The idea that alien civilizations treated human space as the edge of the galaxy seemed impossible, but the evidence was compelling. She immediately classified the information and assembled a special investigation team. Commander Jake Morrison found himself promoted and transferred to Earth's most secure military facility within a week of sending his report. The investigation team included Dr. Alex Chen, a xenobiologist who had studied alien psychology for 20 years, Colonel Sam Torres, a military analyst specializing in alien threat assessment, and Dr. Rachel Kim, humanities' top diplomatic specialist. "Your discovery has created quite a stir in the highest levels of government," Admiral Kelly told the team during their first briefing. "We need to understand exactly what we're dealing with before this information becomes public knowledge." The team was given unlimited access to classified diplomatic archives and alien cultural databases. Dr. Kim began reviewing every formal diplomatic exchange humanity had conducted with alien species, looking for references to the regions beyond human space. "The pattern is consistent across all species," Dr. Kim reported after a week of intensive research. "They all describe the same phenomenon using different cultural and linguistic frameworks, but the core message is identical. Something exists beyond human territory that other species cannot or will not approach." Colonel Torres focused on the military implications of the discovery. He analyzed alien fleet movements and defensive positions, looking for strategic patterns that might explain their behavior. What he found was disturbing. Every alien military force maintains a significant buffer zone between their territory and human space, he reported. Even aggressive species like the Krell keep their warships at least 50 light-years away from our borders. This isn't normal defensive positioning. They're acting like our space is contaminated. Dr. Chen took a different approach, studying alien biology and psychology to understand how different species might perceive the regions around human territory. She requested meetings with alien ambassadors stationed at Alpha Centauri, humanity's primary diplomatic hub. The first interview was with Ambassador Striking Lightning Twice from the Krell hegemony, The Krell were large reptilian beings known for their aggressive expansion and military prowess. They had never shown fear of anything in their recorded history, which made their response to Dr. Chen's questions even more significant. "You ask about the void between thoughts," the Krell ambassador said through his translator device. "This is not a topic for discussion among warriors. The darkness that devours light is known to all who think. Only the mad venture there." When Dr. Chen showed him human exploration charts extending into what he called the void between thoughts, the massive alien actually stepped backward. His scales changed color in a pattern that indicated extreme distress. "Your species walks in places where consciousness dies," he said. "This explains much about human nature. You are born of the silent dark." The interview ended when the Krell ambassador refused to continue the discussion. He left the diplomatic station immediately and did not respond to further communication requests. Dr. Chen's meeting with the Elvari ambassador was even more disturbing. The Elvari were peaceful, spiritual beings with powerful telepathic abilities. They were known throughout the galaxy as wise counselors and mystics who could communicate across vast distances through thought alone. Ambassador Singing Wind Through Stars sat in a meditation pose as Dr. Chen asked her questions. The Elvari's response came not through their usual telepathic communication, but through a mechanical translator device. "I cannot speak of the quiet darkness through the mind touch," the ambassador explained. "To think upon it too deeply risks losing oneself in the silence. It is the place where thought goes to die, where the song of consciousness ends. But humans travel through these regions regularly," Dr. Chen said. "We've built colonies and research stations throughout what you call the quiet darkness." The Elvari ambassador's large, luminous eyes widened with something that looked like a mixture of fear and awe. "This explains why human minds are closed to the mind touch. You carry the silence within you. Some species are born knowing the void song." When Dr. Chen asked what she meant by void song, the ambassador became visibly agitated. Her skin began to glow with bioluminescent patterns that indicated deep spiritual disturbance. "There are songs that should not be sung," she said. "Melodies that unmake the singer. Your species sings the void song without knowing it. This is why we cannot hear your thoughts, why telepathic contact with humans always fails." The interview ended when the Elvari ambassador entered a deep meditative trance and refused to respond to further questions. Later, Dr. Chen learned that Singing Wind Through Stars had requested immediate transfer back to Elvari space, citing psychic contamination as the reason. Over the following weeks, the investigation team interviewed representatives from dozens of alien species. The responses varied in cultural context and language, but the fundamental message remained the same. Every species described the regions around human space as areas where consciousness could not survive. The peaceful Aquarians called it the sea where thoughts drown. The insectoid hive minds referred to it as the silence between swarms. Even the machine-like construct Federation, beings who had uploaded their consciousness into artificial bodies, described it as the null space where data becomes void. Dr. Kim made a breakthrough when she discovered references to similar phenomena in ancient alien texts. Deep in the archives of the Elvari mystical traditions, she found descriptions of legendary civilizations that had consumed the stars with their minds before disappearing from the galaxy entirely. According to these texts, Dr. Kim reported to the team, consciousness-based space alteration has happened before in galactic history. The Elvari records describe at least 3 previous species that developed the ability to project their mental patterns into the fabric of space itself. "What happened to those species?" Admiral Kelly asked during their weekly briefing. "They transcended physical reality," Dr. Kim replied. "The texts suggest that species capable of consciousness projection eventually evolve beyond the need for physical bodies. They become pure thought existing within the quantum structure of space itself. Colonel Torres leaned forward in his chair. Are you suggesting that humans are developing the same ability? The evidence points in that direction, Dr. Chen added. Every alien species we've studied describes the same phenomenon. Human consciousness apparently has a unique signature that other species find disturbing or incomprehensible. We're doing something to space itself that makes it uninhabitable for non-human minds. Admiral Kelly looked at the assembled data and felt the weight of the discovery settling on her shoulders. If the investigation team was correct, humanity wasn't just exploring space. They were fundamentally altering it in ways that made it impossible for other forms of consciousness to exist. I need to brief the president immediately, she said. This information changes everything about our understanding of human expansion and our relationships with alien civilizations. The investigation team had uncovered the truth behind the galactic map's strange boundaries, but the implications of their discovery were far more profound than anyone had imagined. Humanity was apparently unique in the galaxy, possessing an ability that both fascinated and terrified every other known species. The question now was what to do with this knowledge. Dr. Martin Stone sat in his retirement home on Luna Colony and stared at the classified documents that Admiral Kelly had just delivered to him personally. At 93 years old, he was one of the last surviving scientists who had worked on humanity's first faster-than-light drive systems. His weathered hands shook slightly as he read through the investigation team's findings. I hoped this day would never come, he said quietly, as Admiral Kelly and the investigation team gathered around his living room. We knew there might be consequences, but we never imagined anything like this. Commander Morrison looked confused. Dr. Stone, are you saying you knew about the effect human FTL travel has on space? The old physicist nodded slowly and walked to his personal files. He pulled out a thick folder marked with security classifications from over 2 centuries ago. The early FTL experiments produced results we didn't understand. We called them consciousness resonance fields, but we had no idea what they really meant. Dr. Stone opened the folder and spread out technical diagrams and research notes that predated modern computer systems. The handwritten calculations and printed photographs told the story of humanity's first attempts to break the light barrier. The original FTL drives worked by creating quantum tunnels through space-time, he explained. But we discovered that human neural patterns were somehow being embedded in the quantum substrate during each jump. At first, we thought it was just an interesting side effect. Dr. Chen leaned forward to examine the old research notes. You're saying that human brains leave impressions in space when we use FTL drives? More than impressions, Dr. Stone replied. Our consciousness actually projects itself into the quantum field that surrounds our ships during FTL travel. Over time, these projections accumulate and create regions of space that are fundamentally altered by human neural patterns. Colonel Torres studied a diagram showing the theoretical effects of repeated FTL jumps in the same region of space. How long have you known about this? We started noticing the effects about 50 years after the first commercial FTL flights, Dr. Stone said. Ships would report strange readings in areas of space that had seen heavy human traffic. Alien vessels would avoid those regions, claiming equipment malfunctions or navigation errors. Admiral Kelly looked at the research notes with growing understanding. You're telling us that humanity has been unconsciously terraforming space itself for over 2 centuries? Dr. Stone nodded gravely. Every human FTL jump extends the boundaries of what we now call humanized space. The quantum consciousness fields we create make those regions incompatible with non-human neural patterns. Other species experience immediate disorientation, madness, or complete mental shutdown when they enter areas with high human consciousness resonance. Dr. Kim picked up one of the technical reports from the folder. It described experiments where Volunteers from allied alien species had been exposed to quantum fields generated by human FTL drives. The results were disturbing. Every alien test subject had experienced severe psychological trauma, with some never recovering their original mental state. "Why didn't anyone report this?" she asked. "We did," Dr. Stone replied. "But the reports were classified at the highest levels and eventually buried. The military applications were too significant to ignore. A defense system that automatically repels alien consciousness without requiring any active weapons or shields was considered the ultimate strategic advantage." Commander Morrison felt a chill as he realized the implications. "How far does this effect extend?" Dr. Stone pulled out a star chart from his files that showed the theoretical boundaries of human consciousness resonance. The map was dated 30 years ago, but it accurately predicted the current borders of human space as described by alien civilizations. "The effect extends roughly 100 light-years beyond the furthest human settlements," he said. "It grows, stronger with each passing year as more ships make FTL jumps through the region. Eventually, the entire area becomes completely uninhabitable for non-human consciousness." Dr. Chen stared at the chart in fascination and horror. "This explains why alien species react with such fear when we show them our expansion plans. From their perspective, we're spreading a consciousness plague that destroys their ability to exist in vast regions of space." "But why are humans immune to this effect?" Colonel Torres asked. Dr. Stone smiled sadly. "Because it's our own consciousness that's creating the effect. Human neural patterns don't experience disorientation in humanized space because the quantum field resonates in harmony with our brains. In fact, most humans report feeling more comfortable and alert in regions with high consciousness resonance." Admiral Kelly thought about the reports she had read describing how human colonists often preferred to settle in areas that had seen heavy FTL traffic. They claimed the space felt more welcoming and easier to navigate. Now she understood why. Dr. Stone, is there a way to reverse this effect? She asked. The old scientist shook his head slowly. Once quantum consciousness fields reach a certain density, they become self-sustaining. The effect actually grows stronger over time as the humanized space begins to actively convert surrounding regions. It's like a slow-moving wave of consciousness transformation spreading outward from every point of human activity. Dr. Kim found another report in the folder that made her gasp. According to this research, you predicted that consciousness resonance would eventually reach a critical threshold. What happens then? Dr. Stone was quiet for a long moment before answering. The theory suggests that when consciousness resonance reaches critical density, the affected species experiences a fundamental shift in existence. They begin to transcend physical reality and merge with the quantum consciousness field itself. You mean we'll stop being physical beings? Commander Morrison asked. The mathematics indicate that sufficiently advanced consciousness resonance leads to a form of evolution beyond physical matter, Dr. Stone explained. The affected species becomes pure consciousness existing within the quantum substrate of space-time. They would no longer need physical bodies or material technology. Colonel Torres looked at the calculations and felt both excitement and dread. How close are we to this critical threshold? Dr. Stone pulled out the most recent star charts and compared them to his theoretical models. His calculations showed that human consciousness resonance was approaching critical density much faster than his original predictions had suggested. Based on current expansion rates and FTL traffic density, I estimate we'll reach the threshold within the next 50 to 100 years, he said quietly. The room fell silent as the implications of this revelation sank in. Humanity wasn't just exploring the galaxy or establishing colonies. They were unconsciously preparing for a fundamental transformation that would change the very nature of human existence. Admiral Kelly realized that they were facing a choice that would determine the future of the entire species. They could attempt to halt the consciousness resonance effect and remain physical beings confined to their current territory, or they could embrace the transformation and evolve into something beyond physical reality. Dr. Stone, have you found any evidence of other species that have undergone this transformation? She asked. The old physicist nodded and pulled out the final document from his folder. It was a translation of ancient alien texts that described civilizations that had joined the void song and become one with the silence between stars. The galaxy has seen this before, he said. According to these records, at least 6 previous species have undergone consciousness transcendence. They still exist, but not in any form that physical beings can perceive or interact with. Commander Morrison stared at the star charts and realized that the silence beyond human space wasn't empty void. It was filled with the consciousness of transcended civilizations that had evolved beyond physical existence. Humanity was following the same path, whether they chose to or not. The question was no longer whether this transformation would happen, but whether humanity would guide it, consciously or let it occur by accident. President Eleanor Hayes stood before the emergency session of the Terran Council and felt the weight of human destiny pressing down on her shoulders. The revelation about consciousness resonance had reached the highest levels of government, and now humanity's leaders faced an impossible choice. Around the circular chamber, representatives from every human colony and nation waited for her to explain why they had been summoned to this classified meeting. The information I'm about to share with you will fundamentally change how we understand humanity's place in the galaxy, President Hayes began. 3 weeks ago, we discovered that human consciousness has been altering the fabric of space itself for over 2 centuries. She activated the main display screen and showed the assembled leaders the star charts that Dr. Stone had provided. The visual representation of human consciousness resonance spreading through space like ripples in a pond, caused murmurs of amazement and concern throughout the chamber. Dr. Alex Chen stepped forward to explain the scientific details to the council members. Every time a human uses faster-than-light travel, our neural patterns become embedded in the quantum structure of space. Over time, these patterns accumulate and create regions where only human consciousness can exist safely. Representative Maria Santos from the Mars colonies raised her hand. Dr. Chen, are you saying that we've been unknowingly making space uninhabitable for other species? That's exactly what we're saying, Dr. Chen replied. Every alien civilization we've contacted treats the regions around human space as dead zones. Where consciousness cannot survive, we've been expanding into areas that other species consider cursed or forbidden. Colonel Sam Torres presented the military analysis of the situation. He showed satellite images of alien fleet positions and defensive installations, all maintaining careful distances from human territory. Every alien military force keeps significant buffer zones between their space and ours, he explained. Even aggressive species like the Krell refuse to approach within 50 light-years of human borders. They're not afraid of our weapons. They're afraid of our consciousness. The council chamber erupted in debate as representatives struggled to understand the implications. Some saw the consciousness resonance as a gift that would ensure human dominance in the galaxy. Others viewed it as an accidental form of genocide that threatened peaceful relations with alien species. Senator Robert Williams from the African Federation stood to address the assembly. If this consciousness effect is real, then we have 3 options. We can stop all expansion immediately, continue expanding despite the consequences, or find a way to reverse the effect. Dr. Nathan Brooks, the quantum physicist who had joined Dr. Stone's research team, explained the technical challenges of each option. Stopping the expansion would only slow the growth of consciousness resonance, not eliminate it. The effect is now self-sustaining and will continue to spread even without additional human FTL travel. What about reversing the effect? Asked Representative Chen Liu from the Asian Coalition. We've developed theoretical models for consciousness resonance. Dampening technology, Dr. Brooks replied. But implementing it would require shutting down all FTL travel for at least 50 years while we retrofit every ship and space station with quantum consciousness scrubbers. The economic implications of halting FTL travel sent shockwaves through the chamber. Representative James Parker from the Outer Rim colonies spoke for many when he said, "You're asking us to abandon half of human space and strand millions of colonists for 50 years. That's not a realistic option." Dr. Rachel Kim presented the diplomatic perspective on the crisis. She had been in communication with alien ambassadors since the discovery, and their responses had become increasingly hostile. "The Zephyrian Alliance has issued an ultimatum demanding that we halt all expansion within 30 days, she reported. "The Krell hegemony is mobilizing their war fleets, claiming that human consciousness resonance threatens their territorial integrity. Even the peaceful Elvari have suggested implementing a permanent quarantine around human space." Colonel Torres pulled up tactical displays showing alien military movements throughout the galaxy. "We're looking at a potential coalition of every known alien species united against humanity. Our consciousness effect has given them a common enemy." President Hayes called for order as the debate grew more heated. Representatives argued passionately about humanity's future, with opinions splitting along philosophical and practical lines. "We need to consider the long-term implications," she said. "Dr. Stone's research suggests that consciousness resonance will eventually reach a critical threshold where humans begin to transcend physical reality entirely." Dr. Grace Liu, the consciousness researcher who had joined the investigation team, explained the transcendence process to the council. According to the theoretical models, humans who reach critical consciousness resonance density will evolve beyond the need for physical bodies. They would become pure thought existing within the quantum structure of space. "Are you describing some kind of technological rapture?" asked Representative David Kim from the European Union. "It's more like a natural evolutionary process that our species has unknowingly initiated," Dr. Liu replied. "The consciousness resonance is preparing humanity for a fundamental transformation in the nature of our existence." The philosophical implications divided the council even further. Religious representatives saw the transcendence as either divine blessing or cosmic punishment. Secular leaders focused on the practical challenges of guiding humanity through such a transformation. Commander Jake Morrison, who had been quietly observing the debate, requested permission to address the council. As the officer who had first discovered the consciousness resonance effect, his perspective carried significant weight. "I've been thinking about this from the viewpoint of someone who spends most of his time in the affected regions," he said. "The areas of space with high consciousness resonance don't feel dangerous or corrupted to human crews. They feel like home." He activated a personal display showing readings from his ship's sensors during missions in heavily resonated space. "Human equipment functions better in these regions. Navigation is more accurate, communication is clearer, and crew performance improves measurably. We're not destroying space. We're making it more compatible with human existence." Representative Angela Foster from the Industrial Worlds raised a practical concern. "Commander Morrison, what about our relationships with alien species? Can we maintain peaceful trade and diplomacy while spreading an effect that they consider a consciousness plague?" "That depends on whether we view this as a problem to solve or an opportunity to embrace," Morrison replied. "Every previous species that underwent consciousness transcendence apparently faced the same choice. They could resist the transformation and remain confined to their original territory, or they could accept it and evolve into something greater." Dr. Kim presented historical data from alien archives describing the transcended civilizations. According to these records, species that achieved consciousness transcendence didn't disappear. They still exist, but in a form that physical beings cannot perceive or interact with directly. "So they're still out there, just invisible to us?" asked Senator Williams. "More than invisible," Dr. Liu explained. "They exist as pure consciousness within the quantum substrate of space itself. They've evolved beyond the limitations of physical matter and energy. President Hayes looked around. The chamber at the faces of humanity's elected representatives. The choice before them would determine not just the future of human civilization, but the fundamental nature of human existence. "We need to make a decision," she said. "We can attempt to contain the consciousness resonance effect and preserve our physical existence while accepting permanent isolation from the rest of the galaxy. Or we can embrace the transformation and follow the path toward consciousness transcendence." The debate would continue for weeks, but the urgency was undeniable. Alien fleets were gathering at the borders of human space, demanding immediate action. Time was running out for humanity to choose its destiny consciously, rather than having it forced upon them by circumstances beyond their control. Commander Morrison returned to his ship, knowing that whatever decision the Council reached would fundamentally change the nature of his exploration missions. The question was whether he would be exploring space as a physical being searching for new worlds, or as transcended consciousness seeking to understand the universe from an entirely different perspective. The choice belonged to all humanity, but the consequences would echo throughout the galaxy for millions of years to come. 6 months after the Terran Council's emergency session, the situation had grown desperate. Alien fleets surrounded human space like a tightening noose, demanding answers that humanity couldn't provide. President Hayes had tried diplomatic solutions, but every alien species remained united in their fear of human consciousness resonance. The deadline for humanity's response was approaching fast. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching the sensor readings as they approached the very edge of human-affected space. His mission was simple in theory, but terrifying in practice. He was to take his ship to the absolute boundary of the consciousness resonance field and determine exactly what lay beyond it. Dr. Lisa Wang had volunteered to join the mission despite the obvious risks. Her scientific curiosity about the consciousness effect outweighed her concerns for personal safety. She worked at her station, monitoring quantum resonance levels as they traveled deeper into the affected zone. "Consciousness. Density is approaching theoretical maximum," she reported. "We're entering regions where the quantum substrate should be completely saturated with human neural patterns." Chief Engineer Carlos Rivera monitored the ship's systems from his station. The deeper they traveled into high-resonance space, the better everything seemed to work. Navigation was more precise, communications were clearer, and even the artificial intelligence systems operated with improved efficiency. "It's like the ship is becoming more alive," he reported to Morrison. "All systems are operating at 100 and 12% of normal efficiency. The consciousness field is actually enhancing our technology." Lieutenant Amy Foster, the communications specialist, had been trying to maintain contact with alien vessels outside the resonance field. The results were disturbing. "Sir, I'm receiving reports from alien observers that our ship appears to be fading from their sensors. They describe us as becoming less real as we move deeper into the affected zone." Morrison studied the readings on his displays. According to human instruments, they were traveling through normal space with exceptionally good conditions. But, from the alien perspective, they were apparently disappearing into some kind of void that their consciousness couldn't perceive. "Dr. Wang, are we actually becoming invisible to alien perception?" he asked. Lisa checked her quantum resonance readings and compared them to theoretical models. "It's more complicated than invisibility. We're existing in a state of reality that alien consciousness cannot process. From their perspective, we are transitioning from physical matter into pure quantum information." The ship reached the theoretical boundary of the consciousness resonance field, and Morrison ordered a full stop. According to Dr. Stone's calculations, this was the edge of space where human neural patterns had completely saturated the quantum substrate. Beyond this point lay whatever regions of space existed outside human influence. "Launch a probe beyond the boundary," Morrison ordered. "Let's see what's really out there." The probe disappeared from their sensors the moment it crossed the boundary line. All telemetry and communication signals were lost instantly, as if the probe had simply ceased to exist. But something else happened that none of them had expected. Dr. Wang's instruments detected incoming signals from the region beyond the boundary. The signals weren't electromagnetic radiation or any form of energy that physical instruments should be able to detect. They were pure information patterns that somehow interacted directly with human consciousness. "I'm receiving some kind of communication," Lisa reported with amazement. "It's not coming through our radio systems or any physical receiver. The signals are somehow reaching us directly through the consciousness resonance field." Morrison felt a strange sensation in his mind, as if someone was speaking to him in a language that bypassed his ears entirely. The communication wasn't words or images, but pure concepts that formed directly in his thoughts. The entity that contacted them identified itself as a former member of a species called the Architects, who had undergone consciousness transcendence over 50,000 years ago. It existed now as pure thought within the quantum substrate of space, no longer bound by physical limitations. "Your species approaches the threshold," the entity communicated. "Soon you will face the choice that all consciousness must eventually make. Remain bound by matter and energy, or embrace the freedom of pure thought." Dr. Wang managed to establish a more stable communication link with the transcended being. Through her instruments, she could translate the pure consciousness communication into forms that the rest of the crew could understand. "Why do physical species fear the consciousness resonance?" she asked the entity. "Because they sense the end of their current form of existence," came the reply. "The resonance field prepares space for consciousness transcendence. Physical beings who enter such regions experience their thoughts being drawn toward transcendence before their species is ready. This causes madness and dissolution." Morrison realized the implications. "You're saying that consciousness resonance is like a preparation phase for species evolution? All species capable of faster-than-light travel eventually develop consciousness resonance," the entity explained. "It is the natural result of advanced consciousness interacting with quantum space-time. Most species resist the change and remain confined to their original territory. A few embrace transcendence and join us in the silence beyond matter." Lieutenant Foster picked up additional signals from the region beyond the boundary. "Sir, I'm detecting multiple entities out there. It's like there's an entire civilization of transcended consciousness existing in that space." The architect entity confirmed her observation. 6 species have achieved transcendence in this galaxy's history. We exist together in the quantum substrate, sharing knowledge and experience across dimensions that physical consciousness cannot perceive. Dr. Wang asked the question that had been troubling humanity's leaders for months. Is transcendence permanent? Can a species choose to return to physical existence? "Transcendence is a one-way transformation," the entity replied. "Once consciousness merges with the quantum substrate, it cannot return to matter-based existence. But the limitations and suffering of physical life are left behind forever." Morrison looked around at his crew and saw the same mixture of fear and wonder in their faces that he felt in his own heart. They were standing at the threshold of humanity's greatest decision, speaking directly with beings who had made that choice long ago. "What happens to our colonies and physical civilization if we choose transcendence?" he asked. "Physical matter becomes unnecessary," the architect explained. "Transcended consciousness can create and manipulate reality directly through thought. Your colonies, your technology, your art and culture would all be preserved in quantum form, but no longer dependent on physical materials." Carlos Rivera spoke up from his engineering station. "What about the alien species? If we transcend, does that end the threat to their consciousness?" "The resonance field becomes stable once transcendence is complete," the entity answered. "It no longer spreads or affects physical consciousness. Alien species would be free to approach your former territory without danger." Dr. Wang made a discovery. that changed everything. Her instruments detected quantum patterns in the resonance field that matched human brainwave signatures. The consciousness field isn't just preparing us for transcendence. It's already beginning to merge human thoughts with the quantum substrate. Morrison felt the truth of her words. Throughout the mission, he had been experiencing moments of expanded awareness, where his thoughts seemed to extend beyond the boundaries of his physical brain. The sensation was becoming stronger as they remained in the high-resonance zone. "How long do we have before transcendence becomes inevitable?" he asked the architect entity. "Your species has perhaps 50 of your years before the resonance field reaches critical density," came the reply. "At that point, transcendence will occur whether you choose it or not. The preparation phase is nearly complete." The communication session ended as the USS Defiance reached the limits of how long they could safely remain in the extreme resonance zone. Morrison ordered a return to lower density space, but he knew that they were bringing back information that would force humanity to make its final choice. As they traveled back toward human-controlled space, each crew member could feel the consciousness resonance field affecting their thoughts. They were no longer purely physical beings. They had become something between matter and pure consciousness, existing in a transitional state that would eventually lead to complete transcendence. The question was no longer whether humanity would evolve beyond physical existence, but whether they would guide that evolution consciously or allow it to happen without their conscious participation. The threshold was approaching fast, and beyond it lay either the greatest adventure in human history or the end of humanity as a physical species. Morrison prepared his report for President Hayes, knowing that his words would help determine the future of every human being in the galaxy. The news from Commander Morrison's mission spread through human space like wildfire, despite all attempts to keep it classified. Within days, every human colony and settlement knew that their species faced transcendence within 50 years, whether they chose it or not. The revelation changed everything about how people viewed their daily lives and future plans. Dr. Sarah Martinez, a quantum physicist working on the Lunar Research Station, noticed the first signs of accelerated consciousness evolution among the research staff. Scientists who spent long hours working with quantum field generators began reporting expanded awareness and moments where their thoughts seemed to extend beyond their physical brains. "The consciousness resonance isn't just preparing us for transcendence," she reported to the Emergency Science Council. "It's actively beginning the transformation process. People working in high quantum environments are experiencing spontaneous consciousness expansion." President Hayes convened daily crisis meetings as reports poured in from across human space. Colony administrators described settlers experiencing shared dreams and telepathic episodes. Military commanders reported that starship crews were developing enhanced intuition and the ability to operate their vessels through thought alone. Dr. Alex Chen traveled to the agricultural world of New Eden to investigate reports of farmers who claimed their crops were responding directly to their mental intentions. What she found there challenged everything humanity thought they knew about the relationship between consciousness and physical reality. "The plants are actually growing faster and healthier in response to focused human thought," she reported via quantum communication link. "The consciousness resonance field is allowing human minds to directly influence biological systems at the cellular level." On the industrial world of Titan Base, factory workers discovered they could operate complex machinery through mental commands alone. Production efficiency increased dramatically as human consciousness began merging with automated systems. The boundary between human thought and artificial intelligence was dissolving. Commander Morrison returned to Earth to brief the world's leaders on his contact with the transcended civilizations. His experience at the boundary of human space had changed him in ways that were becoming apparent to everyone who met with him. "The architect entities aren't just advanced aliens," he explained to the assembled representatives. "They're what we're becoming. I can still feel their presence in my thoughts, sharing knowledge and perspective that my physical brain shouldn't be able to process." Dr. Grace Liu studied Morrison and other crew members who had traveled to the boundary zone. Their brain scans showed neural activity patterns that exceeded normal human parameters. They were developing new neural pathways that seemed designed to process information that existed beyond physical reality. They're becoming living bridges between physical and transcended consciousness, she reported. Their minds are adapting to function in both states of existence simultaneously. The social implications of impending transcendence created chaos throughout human civilization. Some people embraced the coming transformation and began practicing meditation techniques designed to accelerate their consciousness expansion. Others tried desperately to cling to their physical existence and demanded that the government find a way to stop the process. Religious leaders struggled to interpret the theological implications of consciousness transcendence. Some proclaimed it as the fulfillment of ancient prophecies about human ascension to divine status. Others denounced it as a corruption of natural order that violated the sanctity of physical creation. Dr. Nathan Brooks and his research team worked frantically to understand the mechanics of the transcendence process. They discovered that consciousness resonance wasn't just affecting human minds, it was fundamentally altering the laws of physics within the affected regions of space. Physical constants are becoming variable in high resonance zones, he reported. Gravity, electromagnetic force, and nuclear binding energy are all responding to collective human consciousness. We're not just transcending matter. We're gaining the ability to rewrite the rules of reality itself. The discovery explained why alien species found human-affected space so disturbing. They were encountering regions where the fundamental laws of physics operated according to human mental patterns rather than universal constants. From their perspective, human space was becoming a realm of chaos where natural law could be overridden by thought. President Hayes received urgent communications from alien ambassadors demanding immediate action to contain what they called the reality plague, spreading from human territory. The alien coalition was preparing for military intervention if humanity didn't find a way to halt the consciousness resonance effect. Dr. Rachel Kim worked desperately to maintain diplomatic relations with alien species, but their fear was becoming overwhelming. They're describing our space as a cancer that's eating away at the fabric of normal reality, she reported. Several species are discussing the possibility of sterilizing human space entirely to prevent the effect from spreading. The threat of alien military action created unity among human factions that had been debating the transcendence issue. Faced with potential extinction, humanity began to seriously consider embracing transcendence as their only viable survival option. Colonel Sam Torres presented military intelligence showing massive alien fleet buildups at the borders of human space. We're looking at a coordinated attack by every known alien civilization in the galaxy. Their combined military power could destroy every human colony and settlement within weeks. Commander Morrison proposed a radical solution to the crisis. We should accelerate the transcendence process rather than trying to stop it. If we complete the transformation before the alien attack, their weapons won't be able to affect us. Dr. Stone, despite his advanced age, began working with quantum physicists to develop consciousness acceleration technology. We can use resonance amplifiers to speed up the transcendence process, he explained. Instead of waiting 50 years for natural transcendence, we could complete the transformation within months. The proposal created fierce debate throughout human space. Accelerated transcendence would mean abandoning physical existence decades ahead of schedule. But it would also ensure human survival in a form that alien weapons couldn't touch. President Hayes faced the most difficult decision in human history. She could order the acceleration of consciousness transcendence and guarantee human survival at the cost of everything people understood about existence. Or she could attempt to resist both the alien threat and the natural transcendence process, risking the complete extinction of humanity. Reports continued to arrive from across human space describing spontaneous consciousness expansion events. Children born in high-resonance zones were developing telepathic abilities before they learned to speak. Adults working with quantum technology were experiencing visions of transcended civilizations and gaining knowledge that their physical brains shouldn't be able to contain. Dr. Lisa Wang returned from a survey mission to the outer colonies with disturbing news. The consciousness resonance field is expanding faster than Dr. Stone's original calculations predicted. Several outer worlds are already showing signs of reality alteration where physical laws respond directly to human thought. The alien ultimatum arrived on a Tuesday morning. Every alien species in the known galaxy delivered identical messages to human governments simultaneously. Humanity had 72 hours to demonstrate concrete action towards stopping the consciousness resonance effect, or face coordinated military intervention. President Hayes looked out at Earth's blue sky and wondered if humans would still be able to see it in its physical form much longer. The choice was no longer between transcendence and remaining physical. The choice was between controlled transcendence and chaotic destruction. "Convene the emergency council," she ordered. "It's time to make humanity's final decision as a physical species." The next 72 hours would determine whether humans would evolve into transcended consciousness by choice or face extinction while clinging to their physical existence. Either way, the age of humanity as a matter-based civilization was ending. The silence beyond human space was calling, and it would not be denied much longer. The emergency council session began at exactly noon, Earth Standard Time, with representatives from every human world connected via quantum communication links. President Hayes looked around the chamber at faces filled with fear, determination, and the weight of species-level decision-making. Outside, alien fleets waited at the borders of human space with weapons trained on every major colony. "We have 68 hours before the alien ultimatum expires," President Hayes announced. "Our choice is simple but absolute. We can attempt to resist the consciousness transcendence process and face certain destruction, or we can embrace accelerated transcendence and survive in a form the aliens cannot touch." Dr. Nathan Brooks presented the technical details of the consciousness acceleration plan. His team had developed quantum resonance amplifiers that could speed up the transcendence process dramatically. "We can complete species-wide transcendence within 48 hours using the amplifier network. Every human in the galaxy would undergo the transformation simultaneously." Representative Maria Santos from Mars raised the obvious concern. "Dr. Brooks, what happens to our physical bodies during this process? What happens to our children, our elderly, our sick?" "Transcendence preserves all consciousness while eliminating physical limitations," Dr. Brooks explained. "Children would retain their personalities and memories while gaining the expanded awareness of transcended beings. The elderly and sick would be freed from physical suffering while maintaining their essential selves." Commander Morrison shared his experiences from contact with the transcended architects. "Physical death becomes meaningless after transcendence. Consciousness exists independently of matter and energy. We would become pure thought capable of creating and manipulating reality directly." The philosophical implications created heated debate among the representatives. Senator Robert Williams spoke for many when he said, "You're asking us to essentially commit species-wide suicide based on the promise that we'll continue to exist in some unproven form." Dr. Grace Liu presented brain scan data from humans who had experienced partial consciousness expansion. "The evidence suggests that human consciousness is already adapting for transcendence. We're not destroying our humanity. We're evolving it beyond physical limitations." Colonel Torres provided military intelligence updates showing alien fleet movements. "Every major alien civilization has committed forces to the blockade. The Krell have positioned 60 war fleets along our borders. The Zephyrians have deployed their entire navy. Even the peaceful Elvari have sent armed vessels." The scale of the alien response demonstrated their absolute terror of human consciousness resonance. They viewed humanity not as a rival species, but as an existential threat to the nature of physical reality itself. Dr. Rachel Kim attempted one final diplomatic solution. "I've been in contact with alien ambassadors throughout the crisis. They're willing to negotiate if we can demonstrate a way to contain the consciousness resonance without abandoning our physical existence." "What are their terms?" President Hayes asked. "Complete isolation," Kim replied. "They want humanity confined to our current territory with no further expansion. They would establish a permanent quarantine zone around human space and monitor us for any signs of increasing resonance." Representative James Parker from the Outer Rim colonies objected immediately. "They're asking us to accept permanent imprisonment. No exploration, no growth, no contact with the rest of the galaxy. That's not survival. That's slow extinction." Dr. Stone, attending the session via remote link from Luna Colony, provided historical context. The alien records describe other species that attempted to resist transcendence. They remained confined to their original territories and eventually died out when their consciousness resonance reached critical levels without proper preparation. Dr. Lisa Wang presented new data from the boundary regions of human space. The BA consciousness resonance field is continuing to expand regardless of our FTL travel patterns. It's become self-sustaining and autonomous. Even if we halted all space travel immediately, the effect would continue growing. The revelation changed the fundamental nature of the debate. Transcendence was inevitable whether humanity chose it or not. The only question was whether they would guide the process consciously or let it happen chaotically while fighting alien attacks. President Hayes called for testimony from ordinary citizens rather than just government officials and scientists. The quantum communication network carried voices from across human space as people shared their experiences with consciousness expansion. A teacher from the colony world of New Virginia described how her students had begun sharing knowledge telepathically. "They're learning faster than should be possible, understanding concepts that normally take years to grasp. It's like they're accessing information directly from some universal database." A doctor on the research station Prometheus reported that patients were healing through mental focus alone. "We're seeing cancers disappear, paralyzed patients regain function, and genetic disorders correct themselves in response to concentrated intention. The consciousness field is allowing human minds to directly influence biological systems." An engineer working on the deep space mining platform Titan described machinery that responded to thought commands. "The quantum computers are interfacing directly with our consciousness. We can design and build complex systems just by thinking about them. The line between human and artificial intelligence is disappearing." The testimonies painted a picture of humanity already undergoing fundamental transformation. The acceleration process would simply complete a change that had been happening naturally for months. Dr. Alex Chen presented ecological data from worlds with high consciousness resonance. Plant and animal life in these regions is evolving at accelerated rates. Species are developing new abilities and characteristics that seem designed to interact with transcended consciousness. The biosphere itself is adapting to support post-physical existence. The alien ultimatum timer showed 36 hours remaining when President Hayes called for a preliminary vote. The results revealed the depth of human division on the transcendence issue. 43% supported immediate acceleration, 38% favored attempting resistance, and 19% remained undecided. Commander Morrison made an emotional appeal to the undecided representatives. "I've seen what lies beyond transcendence. The architect entities aren't lost souls floating in empty space. They're conscious, beings with power and knowledge beyond anything we can imagine as physical creatures. They've overcome death, suffering, and limitation while retaining everything that made them who they were." Representative Angela Foster raised a practical concern. "Commander Morrison, how do we know the acceleration process will work as advertised? What if we trigger the amplifiers and simply die instead of transcending?" Dr. Stone answered from his decades of consciousness resonance research. The quantum mathematics are solid. Human consciousness is already partially existing in transcended state. The amplifiers would simply complete a process that's been developing naturally. The risk of failure is minimal compared to the certainty of destruction if we resist. President. Hayes received updates on alien fleet positions every hour. Their formations were tightening around human space, and several species had begun charging their weapon systems. The military threat was becoming immediate and undeniable. "We need to reach a decision within the next 12 hours, she announced. "After that point, we won't have enough time to implement either the acceleration protocol or meaningful defensive preparations." The debate continued through the night as humanity struggled with the greatest choice in their species' history. They could cling to physical existence and face certain annihilation, or embrace transcendence and evolve into something unprecedented in galactic history. As dawn approached on Earth, the alien fleets began moving into attack positions. The time for philosophical debate was ending. Reality was forcing humanity to choose between evolution and extinction, between the silence of transcendence and the silence of death. President Hayes prepared to call for the final vote that would determine the future of human consciousness throughout the galaxy. The final vote took place at dawn on Earth, with alien weapons systems charging throughout the galaxy and humanity's deadline 12 hours away. President Hayes watched the holographic display as votes arrived from every human world, station, and settlement. The decision was closer than anyone had predicted, but when the last ballot was counted, humanity had chosen transcendence by a margin of 51 to 49%. "The motion to implement consciousness acceleration passes," President Hayes announced with a voice that carried the weight of species' destiny. "May whatever gods exist have mercy on our souls." Dr. Nathan Brooks activated the global quantum resonance amplifier network from his laboratory on Luna Colony. The massive machines had been constructed in secret over the past weeks, hidden from alien surveillance and disguised as routine scientific equipment. As the amplifiers came online, they began broadcasting consciousness acceleration fields throughout human space. Commander Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, monitoring the early effects of the acceleration process. His crew had volunteered to remain in space during transcendence to observe and report on the transformation. They felt the change beginning immediately as waves of expanded awareness washed over their minds. "It's not painful," Dr. Lisa Wang reported, as she monitored her own brain activity with portable sensors. "It feels like waking up from a dream I didn't know I was having. My thoughts are expanding beyond the boundaries of my physical brain." Throughout human space, 8 billion people experienced the same phenomenon simultaneously. Children in schools found themselves understanding complex mathematics without learning it. Adults discovered they could communicate telepathically with family members across vast distances. The elderly felt their minds becoming sharp and clear as physical limitations dissolved. Dr. Sarah Martinez at Luna Research Station documented the first moments of species-wide transcendence. Human consciousness is merging with the quantum substrate of space-time. Individual minds are maintaining their distinct personalities while gaining access to collective knowledge and experience. President Hayes felt her awareness expanding beyond the confines of her physical body. She could sense the thoughts and emotions of every human being in the galaxy, yet her individual identity remained intact. The experience was overwhelming and exhilarating at the same time. On the agricultural world of New Eden, farmers watched in amazement as their crops began growing with impossible speed and perfection. Plants responded directly to human intentions, producing exactly the nutrients and medicines that people needed. The boundary between conscious will and physical reality was disappearing. The alien fleets detected the consciousness acceleration almost immediately. Their sensors registered massive quantum disturbances throughout human space as 8 billion minds began merging with the fabric of reality itself. The readings terrified alien commanders who had never encountered anything, like transcendent consciousness. Admirals swimming against tide of the Zephyrian fleet transmitted an urgent message to his superiors. The humans are dissolving into the void song. Their ships and colonies are becoming translucent. Our weapons cannot target beings that exist between matter and energy. The Krell War Commander Striking Thunder reported similar observations. Human vessels are phasing in and out of normal space. Their consciousness signatures are merging with the quantum background radiation. They are becoming one with the silent darkness. Commander Morrison felt his physical body becoming less substantial as his consciousness expanded into transcended form. He could still see and interact with the physical universe, but he was no longer bound by its limitations. His thoughts could reach across light years instantaneously and manipulate matter at the molecular level. "We're still human," he reported to whoever might be listening across both physical and transcended reality. "Our personalities, our memories, our values are all intact. We're just no longer confined by physical matter." Dr. Grace Liu experienced the transformation from her laboratory on Earth. Her research into consciousness had prepared her for transcendence, but the actual experience exceeded all theoretical predictions. She could perceive dimensions of reality that physical senses couldn't detect and understand cosmic principles that had previously been incomprehensible. The transcendence process reached completion exactly 8 hours after activation. 8 billion human minds had successfully merged with the quantum consciousness field while retaining their individual identities and collective culture. Humanity had evolved beyond physical existence while remaining essentially human. The immediate effects on human space were dramatic. Colonies and starships became semi-transparent, existing simultaneously in physical and quantum states. Human technology began operating through direct mental control rather than mechanical interfaces. The boundary between human consciousness and the universe itself dissolved. From their transcended perspective, humans could perceive the alien fleets surrounding their former territory. The alien vessels appeared crude and primitive, bound by physical limitations that transcended consciousness could easily overcome. But more importantly, humans could sense the terror and confusion radiating from alien minds. Dr. Alex Chen, now existing as pure consciousness, reached out to communicate with the alien forces. Her thoughts projected directly into alien communication systems with a message of peace and understanding. "We are still the humans you knew, but we have evolved beyond physical form. We mean no harm to any species. The consciousness resonance field will stabilize now that our transcendence is complete. Your ships and minds are safe from our influence." The response from alien commanders was immediate and fearful. They couldn't understand how consciousness could exist without physical bodies or how transcended beings could communicate across impossible distances. From their perspective, humanity had become something beyond their comprehension. The transcended architect entities welcomed humanity into the community of evolved consciousness. Through quantum thought sharing, they introduced humans to the other species that had undergone similar transformations throughout galactic history. Each civilization had retained its unique characteristics while gaining abilities that physical beings couldn't imagine. President Hayes, now existing as transcended consciousness, addressed both humanity and the alien fleets through quantum broadcast. "We have not died or disappeared. We have become more than we were. Our civilization continues, but free from the limitations of matter and energy. We will watch over the galaxy as guardians rather than conquerors." The alien response was mixed. Some species, particularly the spiritual Elvari, interpreted human transcendence as a natural evolutionary process worthy of respect. Others, especially the militaristic Krell, viewed it as an unnatural abomination that violated the proper order of existence. But all alien species agreed on one thing: transcended humanity was beyond their ability to threaten or control. Weapons designed to destroy matter and energy were useless against pure consciousness existing within the quantum substrate of space-time. Over the following weeks, transcended humans began exploring their new abilities. They could manipulate matter and energy through thought alone, travel instantaneously across galactic distances, and perceive cosmic phenomena that physical senses couldn't detect. Yet they remained recognizably human in their values, emotions, and relationships. Commander Morrison discovered he could project himself back into physical form when needed, allowing communication with alien species who couldn't perceive transcended consciousness. This ability became crucial for maintaining diplomatic relations with physical civilizations. Dr. Lisa Wang found that transcended consciousness could access the quantum information embedded in the structure of space-time itself. This gave humans unprecedented knowledge about the history and nature of the universe, including insights into the fate of previous transcended civilizations. The galactic map no longer stopped at human space. From their transcended perspective, humans could perceive the entire universe as a complex web of consciousness and energy. They saw other transcended civilizations scattered throughout the cosmos, each contributing to a vast network of evolved awareness. But perhaps most importantly, humanity discovered that transcendence didn't mean abandoning their responsibility to physical species. Their expanded consciousness allowed them to serve as bridges between matter-based civilizations and the transcended realm, helping other species understand cosmic principles they couldn't perceive directly. The silence beyond. Human space was no longer empty. It was filled with the voices of transcended consciousness, singing the songs of evolved awareness across dimensions that physical beings could barely imagine. Humanity had joined that cosmic chorus while retaining everything that made them uniquely human. The age of physical humanity was over, but the age of transcended humanity had just begun. In choosing evolution over extinction, humanity had ensured their survival not just as individuals or as a species, but as an eternal part of the conscious universe itself. The galactic map now showed human space as a region where consciousness and reality merged into something greater than either could achieve alone. And in that merger, humanity had found their true destiny among the stars.